Did Ferrari just discover the real problem with its car too late? Because what Frédéric Vasseur found in Lewis Hamilton's SF26 after sprint qualifying in Miami 2026 is not a simple failure. It is an alarming sign that the entire concept of the car could be on the limit. And the most worrying thing is not what was seen on the track, but what the hidden data revealed after that lap. Miami was not just another race on the calendar, it was the real restart point of the championship, the stage where Ferrari had decided to risk everything with a radical change to its car. After a start to the season marked by the clear superiority of Mercedes and an obvious disadvantage in top speed, the Scuderia arrived with extreme pressure, knowing that this weekend could define the course of its entire year. Frédéric Vasseur had made it clear weeks ago, another championship began here, a statement that not only raised expectations, but also anticipated that what Ferrari was going to show on the track had nothing to do with what had been seen up to that point. The SF26 that appeared in Miami was not just another evolution. It was practically a new car disguised as the previous one. Ferrari had modified multiple critical areas at the same time, from the floor to the rear wing, to adjustments to cooling, weight, and overall aerodynamic efficiency. It was an extremely aggressive bet, unusual even in the middle of the season because it involved taking an enormous risk. If something failed, it would be much more difficult to identify the source of the problem. But Ferrari had no choice. It needed to close the gap with Mercedes on the straight and regain competitiveness immediately, even if that meant pushing the car concept to an unknown limit. And in the middle of all that context appeared Lewis Hamilton, still in the process of adapting to the team, but increasingly connected to the behavior of the car. What made this situation special is that Hamilton was not only driving, he was interpreting the SF26, trying to understand its reactions in extreme conditions. Something key in a sprint weekend where the margin for error is practically non-existent. Sprint qualifying with a single prior practice session forced the teams to make quick, almost instinctive decisions, and that exposed any structural weakness of the car with no room to correct it. From the outside, the session might have looked like just another battle on the grid, with tight gaps and varying performances, but internally Ferrari was accumulating critical information with each lap. Each sector, each curve, each Hamilton steering wheel correction was generating data that would later be analyzed in detail. Because on a weekend like this, it's not just about the final position, but about understanding how the car reaches that result. And what was beginning to emerge during the sprint was disturbing. The SF26 showed flashes of performance, yes, but not consistently, as if there was something in its behavior that didn't quite fit. That was the true beginning of the problem, although no one was yet aware of its magnitude. Because while on the track everything seemed relatively normal, inside the Ferrari garage a silent doubt was already beginning to form, a feeling that the car was not responding exactly as expected. And it would be precisely at the end of that sprint classification when Frédéric Vasseur, with all the data on the table, would begin to discover that what they had in their hands was not just an improved car, but a concept that could be hiding a much deeper problem. And it is right after that sprint classification when everything changes within Ferrari. Because when analyzing the SF26 data in depth, Frédéric Vasseur finds something that doesn't add up, something that completely breaks with what the team expected to see after introducing such an aggressive update package. It wasn't an obvious problem in a single corner or in a single sector, it was something much more complex. The car was not generating its performance in a linear way. There were peaks, moments where it seemed competitive, even close to the best. But immediately afterwards it fell into an inconsistency that is difficult to explain. Telemetric analysis of Lewis Hamilton's car is beginning to reveal a worrying pattern. When entering the corner, the car reacted in one way, but when passing through the apex and especially at the exit, the behavior changed drastically. This not only affected the lap time, but forced the driver to constantly correct, breaking any attempt to construct a perfect lap. And here's the key. It wasn't Hamilton's adaptation problem, it was the car that was sending contradictory signals in each phase of the corner. When Vasseur delves even deeper, he finds the origin of the conflict in the interaction between the new pieces. Ferrari had modified too many elements at once, especially the floor and rear wing, two critical areas that determine how air flows around the car. What they discover is that these updates, instead of working in harmony, were generating aerodynamic interference. In simple terms, the air was not behaving as the team had predicted in the wind tunnel or in simulation, and this was causing pressure losses at key moments. This explains why the SF26 seemed to have speed, but couldn't sustain it. At certain points of the circuit, especially on straight lines or in specific curves, the car showed clear improvements compared to previous versions. But as soon as it entered a more demanding sequence, the lack of stability immediately appeared. It was a car with potential, but trapped in an extremely narrow operating window, where any small variation in tire temperature, wind, or line completely changed its behavior. And this is where Vasseur's discovery becomes really critical, because he also identifies that part of this problem comes from Ferrari's own intention to reduce drag to compete with Mercedes on the straight. This adjustment, necessary due to the top speed disadvantage, was compromising the aerodynamic balance in curves more than expected. That is to say, Ferrari had partially solved one problem, creating another one even more difficult to manage. The most alarming thing of all is that this type of problem cannot be corrected with a simple setup adjustment. It is not a question of changing wings, suspensions, or braking distribution. It's a structural conflict in how the car generates downforce, something that requires time, development, and, above all, difficult decisions. Because now Ferrari has to decide whether to continue evolving this concept, or accept that they have reached a limit that they had not anticipated. And while all this happens in the data, on the track a very clear image remains. Lewis Hamilton fighting with a car that at times seems competitive, but that never allows him to completely trust it. An unmistakable sign that the problem is not visible to the naked eye, but it is there, hidden in every curve, in every correction, in every thousandth that slips away. And this is where everything becomes much more serious for Ferrari, because what Frédéric Vasseur discovers after analyzing the SF26 is not just a technical problem. It is a direct warning about the car's real limit. What seemed like a simple lack of performance against Mercedes turns into something much deeper. Ferrari is not fully understanding its own car, and that in Formula One is one of the most dangerous situations you can be in. Because when a car has an operating window as narrow as that revealed by Lewis Hamilton's data, the problem is no longer going faster. It is being able to repeat that performance. And without consistency, there is no possible classification, there is no strategy that will save him, there is no driver who can push him to the limit without paying the price. What Ferrari has on its hands is a car that can be competitive in theory, but unpredictable in practice. And that combination is exactly what separates the teams that fight to win from those that stay halfway. This discovery forces Ferrari to face a critical decision that could define its entire 2026 season. Because now it is no longer a matter of continuing to add parts or evolve the package as planned. Now they have to ask themselves if the path they have chosen is the right one, or if they need to take a step back to rebuild the foundation of the car. And those types of decisions not only cost time, they also cost results, especially in a championship where every race counts and where rivals like Mercedes are not going to wait. Furthermore, there is an even more delicate factor that emerges from all of this: the absolute dependence on pilot feedback. In this scenario, Lewis Hamilton becomes a key player in deciphering the behavior of the SF26, but even with all his experience, there is a limit. Because when the problem is in the aerodynamic base of the car, the driver can point out symptoms, but he cannot correct the cause. And that leaves Ferrari in an uncomfortable position, where the margin for reaction is much more limited than it appears from the outside. The most shocking thing of all is that this moment, this sprint classification in Miami, marks an internal before and after for the team. Because this is where Ferrari stops looking for immediate performance, and starts looking for answers. And in Formula One, when a team changes its approach from attacking to understanding, it is because it has detected a problem that can compromise everything that comes after. Thus, what began as a key weekend to relaunch their season ends up becoming an alarm signal. Ferrari isn't just fighting its rivals, it's fighting the hidden limitations of its own car. And what Frédéric Vasseur discovered after the sprint could not only explain the team's present, but also completely condition its immediate future in 2026. What happened at Miami 2026 was not just another sprint qualifier, it was the moment when Ferrari was forced to face an uncomfortable truth about its own project. Because what Frédéric Vasseur discovered in Lewis Hamilton's SF26 is not a temporary problem that can be solved with weekend adjustments, it is a clear sign that the car is operating at a much more delicate limit than the team had anticipated from its conception. Ferrari arrived in Miami with the intention of restarting its season, closing the gap on Mercedes and showing that they had the tools to fight for victories. But instead of confirming that leap forward, what they found was a much more complex scenario. A car with potential, yes, but trapped in an inconsistency that makes it unpredictable, difficult to exploit, and, above all, dangerous at a competitive level. Because in modern Formula One, the fastest car in a sector does not win. The one that can repeat its performance lap after lap without errors wins. This discovery completely changes Ferrari's narrative in 2026. It is no longer just about evolving, bringing more improvements, or optimizing the setup. Now it is about understanding if the base of the SF26 itself is correct. And that is a much deeper, much more uncomfortable question because it involves accepting that part of the path taken might not have been the right one. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton remains at the center of this technical storm, trying to extract performance from a car that at times responds, but never in the same way twice. And that not only limits their performance, it also conditions the team's entire strategy, because when you can't predict your car, you can't build a solid weekend around it either. Thus, what seemed to be the beginning of a new stage for Ferrari ends up becoming a critical turning point. Miami did not give them positive answers, it gave them doubts. And in Formula One, doubts are the worst enemy of any team that aspires to win. Because now Ferrari not only has to go faster, it has to rebuild its understanding of the car, and that is a much more difficult race than any Grand Prix. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.